Transmitting from the Mojave Wilderness in Joshua Tree, California, now is the time for Desert Oracle Radio, the voice of the desert.
Night has fallen on the desert when the mystery returns. I was glancing at the news and saw this great big house I instantly recognized. Elvis Presley's Graceland. Because the president visited Graceland along with all the news media the other day. It really is a place of pilgrimage, especially for those who know a little about show business. It's even a National Historic Landmark. Since 2006, when then President George W. Bush visited. Jimmy Carter visited too, but after he was president. Elvis died when Jimmy Carter was president. 6 months after Carter's inauguration, now that I think about it. We gotta look into that. Now, Elvis famously visited Richard Nixon at the White House in the early 70s. Nixon gave Elvis a license to kill, a DEA agent's badge. This is true. Many rooms in the mansion. Bill Clinton earned the Secret Service code name Elvis. Nobody knows why. Not for his singing. So there's the famed mansion, Graceland, on the front page, front screen of the computer-generated news headlines. Some 66 years since Elvis moved into his beloved home. On 13 plus acres along U.S. Route 51, the section in front of Graceland, since renamed Elvis Presley Boulevard. If you were ever kind of a music nut about hillbilly and rockabilly, country western and western swing, well, you know about Graceland because you know about rock and roll, the primal force that rose up out of Mississippi poverty and poetry. Even people who don't like Southern music tend to know about Graceland because Elvis Presley was the biggest star in America, the biggest sensation in the world for many years. The guy from Simon and Garfunkel even made a pop record called Graceland. And it was a big deal about 40 years ago, which was already 30 years after Elvis Presley's first record, which was a double A-side single, That's All Right Mama and Blue Moon of Kentucky, blues and bluegrass together at last. So if that was 70 plus years ago, Elvis would be 91 years old in our time, the year of our Lord, 2026. He'd be 4 years younger than the alive and well William Shatner. So it's not impossible to imagine. Bob Dylan's in his early 80s, still on the road, still making records to great acclaim. Had a big movie made about him. So maybe Elvis is still out there. The great Elvis Presley. Maybe listening on his radio tonight, pulled over on the side of Amboy Road. like way back when Elvis would head up to Vegas to do his shows. Elvis Presley, if you're out there, I've done you proper reverence. I am a credited vocalist on Mojo Nixon's song, Elvis is Everywhere, no lie. So we're not putting you down. Presley would head up from Palm Springs because he and his wife, Priscilla, Mrs. Presley, had a home there. They called it Graceland West. It was on West Chino Road in Palm Springs. There's even a story about Elvis seeing a great big triangular UFO hovering low over the Mojave on the side of the road during one of those very drives to Vegas. I've told it before. I used to always tell that story at the Desert Oracle Campfire Stories in Palm Springs. How the pattern of lights he saw to Elvis looked like Joseph Stalin.
Desert Oracle Radio.
But Elvis's real home was Graceland, a stately colonial revival mansion with 4 Corinthian columns supporting a Greek temple-style portico that reaches out to greet you. The house is built on a little hill over an ancient grove of oaks and pleasant green pastures. It was already called Graceland when Elvis's parents bought the house for him, being sent out with $100,000 and Elvis's requirements for the place. He wanted space around because the never-ending fans coming around had driven his previous neighbors nuts in a rich neighborhood on Audubon Drive in Memphis. Graceland was not a farmhouse, which is what Elvis asked his parents to find, but he liked it, this stately home built by the old Tennessee gentry. He moved in way back in 1957, just a couple of years into his whirlwind career. By the 1960s, when Elvis had been released by the Army, which took him for 2 years, sent him to Germany, where he sat around on a U.S. Army base and played guitar and chased the daughters of the commanding officers. By the 60s, when he was home, Elvis started decorating Graceland to fit his whims and to fit the excesses of 1960s interior design. The house itself is beautiful. It could be the home of a founding father. And it is, in a way. But inside is what most people remember, especially since tacky strip mall Memphis filled in all the pretty rural land that had once been around the Presley's acreage. It should be like Monticello approached through farmland. On horseback, ideally. I know the place. Graceland. I've been there. I went there in the middle 1980s on a road trip through Tennessee from Memphis to Bristol, hitting all the holy pilgrimage stops on the country music tour. I had an F-150 with a straight 6, the rare stick-on-the-floor model. I I always like a manual transmission. I like the coordination of the left foot on the clutch and the right hand shifting gears, right foot on the gas, left hand on the wheel, engaged driving. That was a good truck. That was a XLT, dark gray with light gray panels. I put in a custom stereo with a cassette deck. It had a 40-channel Cobra CB radio. I added a camper shell so you could sleep a couple hours at the rest stop, and then power on through the American night. Elvis had only been gone 7 years or so when I walked into Graceland. You could walk up to his private jet, the Lisa Marine, named for his daughter. And his pink Cadillac was parked under a carport behind the house. I've got a picture of me standing in front of it at the driver's side door. I probably could have sat on the hood if I wanted, but that would be barbaric. Like knocking over the altar with the sacrament in church. Elvis's famous guitar was open in the case, Elvis Presley spelled out on the fretboard. A gimmick that Jimmy Rogers started nearly a century ago in 1928. A fret comes from Old French in the 1300s, the 14th century. It meant binding or lacing. I remember the billiards room that Elvis had very well. It was like the inside of some Hollywood sultan's tent. It was too busy for my taste then and now. The kitchen and other technology-heavy rooms already felt outdated, garish. Taste changed real quick in the 1980s. It was sort of all reactionary. Like so much is. In personal taste and otherwise. In Nashville, we made respectful visits to the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Ryman Auditorium, went to Music Row, went to RCA Studio B, built by Chet Atkins, home studio to all kinds of legends. Roy Orbison, Dolly Parton, the Everly Brothers, Porter Wagner. 240 Elvis Presley songs were recorded there, including Are You Lonesome Tonight? And Now and Then There's a Fool Such as I. It's been a museum since 1977, but in the mid-80s, it was still very hands-on. A little different than now. There were guitars set up, old tube amps on, an Echoplex reverb unit plugged into a blonde Fender amp, and you could play around with the instruments. The guys watching the studio were retired engineers and retired pickers. They wouldn't let you mess anything up, but they didn't mind if you played a couple of chords on the piano Floyd Kramer played on all those great records. That's where he played his famous instrumental, Last Date. Pull that up on your stereo music app someday. That's one of the most evocative pieces of music in the American canon. Never used in a David Lynch movie that I know of. Though David Lynch sure used Roy Orbison's In Dreams, on which Floyd Kramer's playing the piano, Boots Randolph on saxophone, the guitar greats Howard Bradley and Grady Martin, also recorded in RCA Studio B, Nashville, Tennessee. Harold Bradley was Owen Bradley's little brother, Owen Bradley, who famously produced Patsy Cline's famous records. Harold Bradley is probably the most popular musician few people know the name of. He played on thousands of hits, pop and rock, and especially country, because he recorded in Owen Bradley's famous Nashville Sound Studio, which is known for the smooth and sophisticated stuff. But that's also Harold Bradley picking Dixie on the banjo leading into Johnny Horton's The Battle of New Orleans. And the slinky six-string electric bass on Patsy Cline's Crazy. He's playing guitar on Jingle Bell Rock and Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree by Miss Brenda Lee. Anyway, I'm glad to see Graceland is still the shrine it should be when you make it to president, which is about as close to being Elvis as a mortal can get. You should visit the tomb of Elvis behind the famous mansion. Like Alexander the Great visited the famous tomb of Achilles outside Troy 2,350 years ago. He paid homage at the tombs of Ajax and all the rest, according to 1st century AD historian Diodorus. But at the tomb of Achilles, Alexander performed a euphoric ritual, tearing off his clothes and dancing naked around the tomb of the Trojan war hero. This according to Plutarch and his parallel lives. And Plutarch has the greatest respect for Alexander, and as a high priest of the temple of Apollo at Delphi, he has the greatest respect for Achilles, legendary demigod and hero, and famously bad-tempered, too. But Achilles came around. Those romantic young boys, all they want to do is fight. That's a Bruce Springsteen line from back in his Van Morrison phase. Bruce Springsteen got in trouble once for trying to jump the fence at Graceland. He wanted to get in and talk to the king. Another long hair out of his mind on something or other. What graves are we wantonly dancing around in our time? A couple of decades ago, I saw some kind of grunge hippies dancing around Jim Morrison's tomb in Paris. They weren't naked, though. That's probably for the best. But what about the meteors? I don't know if you've heard or seen, but we've been getting a lot of meteors and great big fireballs, especially over America in the past week or so. And with the warfare happening in the Middle East, and stories of long-range missiles, like the ones that got nearly to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, we're all a little edgy about strange things falling out of the sky. Especially when the astronomers keep insisting that this is not a meteor storm. But we're in the middle of something which is a rash of widely seen fireballs and meteors, notable ones every day now. If you follow the NASA Skywatch alerts, well, they're not quite alerts because they come out after the sightings are reported, but you can see all the reports coming in. And sometimes even some pictures, some dash cam videos, some doorbell surveillance videos. A hunk of space rock pierced a Houston house's roof and was poking through the ceiling drywall. People are bringing in strange samples from cow pastures. What's going on? Well, here's the truth. Some valuable information you can use in your life. Tell your friends, impress your enemies. From Joshua Tree's community radio station, Z107.7 FM. In March, often every March, there are many dramatic fireball sightings. Astronomers expect it. Skywatchers look forward to it. Lots of dramatic sightings. East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, Mountain West, all over the place. My favorites are the green fireballs. If you haven't heard it, go back into our archives and look for the Mysterious Green Fireballs episode from, probably 5 or 6 years ago. Longer. Something like 20 meteorites hit the Earth's surface every day. About 7,000 of them every year. These are the ones that hit, that leave some space rock behind. Because the Earth is mostly covered in oceans, most of those space rocks just plop into the wine dark sea, and that's it. Maybe now and then one hits a fish. But it adds up, all those little rocks and occasional big rocks. It adds up to about 50 tons of space dust and bits of rock that make it to the surface each and every day. 50 tons. That would cost you about $3,000 to dump at the landfill, and landers let the fish have it. Most of the shooting stars we see are little bits of rock and ore that burn up in the atmosphere. And that's what we see. This bit of rock is hauling tail through the solar system. It's going somewhere between 25,000 and 100,000 miles per hour. And then they hit the wall, the barrier, the defense system of Earth, in place for nearly 3 billion years now. There's nothing like it in the solar system, nothing like it anywhere as far as we can tell. There is one planet our astronomers have detected using the latest space telescopes, radio telescopes, etc. If we ever had light-speed space transport, it would still take 125 years to get there. Take a look around. See if maybe there were some early simple forms of marine life in the water, if they've got liquid water. So say we could fit a person in the Voyager space probe. Voyagers 1 and 2, the fastest moving spacecraft out there. Well, it would still take around 100,000 years to get to this planet. Check it out. We're going to need more than one person to fit in there, a minimum of 2. 100,000 years. What a remarkable combination of circumstances, pieces in motion over billions of years that made our home planet, planet Earth, that rarest of places. The thick atmosphere saves Earth from looking like the moon or Mars, covered in craters, one disaster after another. Not pummeled by rocks, not burnt up by the sun's radiation. Is it luck? From Amboy to Zzyzx and across the great Mojave Wilderness, you've been listening to Desert Oracle Radio. We broadcast Friday nights at 10 p.m. on KCDZ 107.7 FM, community radio in the high desert. Or listen to our podcast. Thanks to all our friends on patreon.com/Desert Oracle who support this show, which you'll notice does not have any annoying commercials. That's a choice. And we had some classic red, blue, black, silver soundscapes on tonight's program. The magnetosphere keeps our atmosphere in place. It keeps it from being destroyed by the constant barrage of solar radiation. The sun is life, but as we know very well out here in the desert, if not deflected, limited, if we don't get some protection from it, the sun is also death. Everything is death, or without life, except for here on our beautiful planet. Why is that? Even the most pragmatic of scientists are baffled to the point that one of them, the late Carl Sagan, invented a way to think about creation becoming conscious. Through us, humanity becomes the means by which the universe comes to know itself. Well, maybe. The discoveries come with great telescopes, great vessels, from sailing ships to rocket ships, incredible propulsion systems, complex radios that can reach 16 billion miles across space, across time. Like the Voyager probe, still sending data back. To JPL in California, still picking up the signal at the Deep Space Telescope just south of Death Valley National Park. The antenna base and the remote settlement called Mars, and it looks like Mars out there too. Death Valley is kind of known for that. Thank you for listening. Don't get burned up by the sun. And good night from the voice of the desert.